Hello there, my lovely jewelry makers. I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this easy wirework snowflake that you can use for earrings, necklaces, or even a Christmas decoration. So if you want to learn how you can make one yourself, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we'll need. Now the wire I'm using is a regular round silver coated copper wire, and the gauge is a 0.8mm. And if you want to add a dangle to the middle of yours as well, you of course need some kind of bead. The one I'm using is a 6mm round, and it's a faceted silver coated hematite gemstone bead. But of course you can use whatever you prefer. And we do also need a headpin to be able to attach the dangle. And of course we need some findings. So in this case I'm using some earring posts and butterfly backs and a couple of jump rings to attach everything together. But of course if you want to turn it into a necklace, you just need a chain and clasp. As for the pliers, I've got some flush cutters so we can of course cut our wire, round nose pliers to make our loops with, and tweezer nose pliers to manipulate the wire. And finally I'm also going to be using a ruler to help get the piece as symmetrical as possible. So you can check out the description box below the video for the material list and useful links. Otherwise let's get it all ready and let's get started. Now as for the wire, I'm going to leave that attached to the reel, that way we have minimum wastage. Now I'm going to grab my round nose pliers and then go towards the end of the wire that's still attached to the reel. Then what I want to do first of all is place my pliers and leave a tail of about 5cm or so. And I'm placing the wires so they're towards the tip, so the loops we're going to make are not going to be very big. What I'm then going to do is use the length that's still attached to the reel here and start shaping it around the pliers, and I'm going kind of downwards towards myself. And then I'm crossing over the tail of itself there, and go all the way around to create pretty much a full circle or a little loop like that. So we have about a 90° between the two lengths of wire. Then I'm going to go onto the wire just next to where that first loop is, making sure there's a little bit of space between the pliers and the other loop. And again, place the wire on your pliers roughly in the same place so the loops become as even as possible. Now what I'm going to do is bring the wire kind of upwards and away from myself, around towards the other loop there that we made, and I'm going to go over the top of it and then back down next to the initial tail. You can always reposition your pliers whenever you need to. So we now have two loops right next to each other there. What I just like to do is just take my pliers and kind of just flatten them just ever so slightly. Don't squeeze too hard, but just a little bit. Then I'm going to place my pliers a little bit next to that loop that we just made, again on the working length of wire. I'm going to then bring the wire upwards and towards the loop we just made and bring it over the top, come all the way back around until it then comes back underneath the first loop. So we kind of create a little corner of loops here, and then between the initial tail and the length of wire we still have about a 90° angle. So this is basically going to be one point in the snowflake. So what I'm going to do now is just grab my ruler, because this is where we want it to be as symmetrical as possible. So I'm just going to go from the 0 and place that right where that last loop we made ends, and the wire starts to go straight down, and then hold on to that, and then I'm going to place my pliers, in this case on the 2cm mark, which is then where we're going to make our next loop. So basically I'm just measuring the distance between the points of the snowflake, and we're now just going to repeat the same thing that we just did. So remember, we start out by bringing the length downwards towards ourselves, make sure it goes over the top of everything else, and then back out so we get that roughly 90° angle. Then place your pliers next to the first loop. Now go upwards and come over the top of everything, and basically come down towards the first loops that we made, but also on top of the wire in between the sections here. And finally place your pliers next to the loop we just made, and then go upwards again and bring it all the way around. Just rotate your piece or your pliers however you need to, so it comes down, and we again create another little corner of about 90°. You can see it's almost forming a square now, and these are the corners. And again, you can just flatten things out a little bit, and this is how we're going to keep working with it. So from this corner that we just made, I'm grabbing my ruler again, placing the 0 right after the final loop we made, and then placing my pliers on the 2cm mark, and from there just go on and make your next loop to start off the next corner here, or point of the snowflake, however you want to look at it. And then just repeat the same thing that I showed you on the other corners, and you just want to keep doing this basically until you have all the points in the snowflake. So I've now made 6 points of the snowflake, and as you can see, it started to overlap itself. So we kind of have 2 layers on some of them, but you can just gently work around that with your pliers as you need to. Now from here, what I'm going to start to do is shape all this more into place, so we get more of the final look of the snowflake. So just go in one section at a time. Just start with the last one that you made there. So what we're going to do is the 2 sections with the loops here, I'm basically going to add a bit of a curve into the wire between them that goes downwards like that, just gently, just do a bit at a time. Then I'm going to move to the next one, add a bit of a curve there as well. And nothing's final yet, we can keep adjusting it as we go. And you just want to do this all the way around until we have a curve in the wire between all the sections there. And you can then see they no longer overlap, and we're starting to get something that looks a little bit more like the final result is supposed to. From here we can just keep adjusting it. So just get all the little loop sections into better position, and obviously move everything so we end up having them laying in the final shape. So whatever you need to adjust, just do that. And then also just add a bit of a curve into the ends of the wire. Then what we need to do is get the final shape in place and kind of lock it in. So I'm going to bring the 2 end sections into position so they're as even as possible with the rest here, and we get the final shape. So you can just do that by eye, and then the length that we're working with that's still attached to the reel is overlapping. Don't worry about the other tail for now, we're going to deal with that. But then what we're going to do is place the section as even as possible to the other side, and then this length of wire, while holding everything in place, I'm going to bring that over the top of the next loop section, which is the original first one that we did, and then come down the side and just come underneath the loops there, and then go around the back. You can always change position, how you're holding everything, rotate it as you go, and then come up the other side of the loops, then all the way back around to the front so it overlaps itself. And you basically loop this wire around this section here, and then have it come in the direction towards the next loop section. Kind of like to flatten everything a bit as I go as well. Then same principle, bring that down the side of that section, underneath the loops, around the back, out the other side towards the front again, and then overlap itself. And you can see we then have the final shape in place. And basically I'm going to continue like this all the way around until we get back to the beginning, and I've reached the final loop section there. Same principle, come down on one side, loop around the back, come back to the front on the other side, and then back up towards that very first section that we started with. And I'm just going to leave it there for now, because what I just want to do is then deal with this initial tail that we left, because as you can see that tail is actually part of the design as well. Because if I just move this out of the way, having gone all the way around, if I remove this tail completely, we're left without a length of wire here, and it's not quite the same all the way around. So this length is actually going to be one of the outer little lengths of wire. So we want to make sure we just fasten that in place, and I'm going to do that by just gently bending it down. I'm holding on to everything to make sure it stays in place. And then because we just made the loop around that final section that we did, I'm going to then come from behind and bring this end of the wire up through that loop from back to front, and then you can just pull it all the way through and gently making sure we hold on to everything so it doesn't go out of shape. And you can just make sure that we have a bit of a curve in that as well, and then just gently push it down a bit. We don't need to finish it off just yet, just get it into place so we do add that final wire there and it's all symmetrical. So we've now done one full round here. Then what I want to do is basically repeat and go around once more, so I have the wire coming over the top of everything and then towards that next group of loops. And then I'm going to come down the side, and you just come in right below the first loop that we went around with, and then behind it, up the other side, back to the front, and then back out in the direction towards the next section of loops. So you can see this is the effect that we get. And then same thing around the side of that, making sure to come underneath the very first loop that we made, then up the side to come back to the front, and it looks like that. So you just want to keep doing that all the way around to the beginning again until we make it back to the very last one. So just repeat on that around the side, come up the other side, back to the front, and now it looks the same all the way around. So what we can do now is go in and cut off the excess wire because we're done using it. So here where the end is still attached to the reel, I'm going to cut it off and just leave a short little length that just goes a bit beyond this section. And then grabbing some tweezers, I'm just going to grab the end of it and then basically push it down between the two inner wires there. So in that gap right before the middle, and then come out towards the back here, and you can just grab onto the end with your pliers and then bring it around back up towards the loop section, and then cut off the excess so we just have a short little tail left, something a bit like that. And then you can see the little tail there. All we want to do is basically just squeeze that into place so it's not sticking out and catching or scratching on anything. So just tuck it out of the way. And then we have this tail left here that's coming out towards the front. So I'm just going to go in and cut off the excess. Again, just leaving a short little tail that I can then grip onto with my pliers and just push that through the loop again, making sure we go around one of the other wires and then come out towards the back. And then on the back you can also just tuck that end away. And then once you've done that, you have your finished snowflake. Now what I just like to do is just kind of flatten the tips down a bit because I find that they kind of want to go a little bit towards the front. So just flatten them out all the way around. And then you have your finished snowflake that you can do what you want with. Now if you want to add your dangle to the middle, we just need to grab our head pin and then of course our bead, add the bead onto the head pin, and then we need to make a wrap loop. So just a bit above the bead, I'm going to just place my pliers, put a bend into it, about 90 degrees or so. Then I'm placing my round nose so we can make a loop by bringing the head pin all the way back around and create a full circle like that. And then to attach it, what I'm going to do is bring this head pin through that little diamond you can see that's been created by all the overlapping wires. That's right in one of the corners there next to the inner opening. And just place it through and make sure the loop part comes into the middle. And you can just bring the head pin through the opening there. So you can see it's going to end up hanging in that little corner, perfectly dangling in the middle. Now what we need to do is just finish off the wrapped loop. So you can just kind of push the snowflake to the side, grab onto the loop with your pliers, and then just wrap the remaining part of the head pin around the little space that we left above the bead to basically fasten the loop in place, but also making sure the bead sits nicely. And then can go in, cut off the excess, and always just make sure to then push down the very end so it's not sticking out. And then you have your dangle hanging right there in the middle, adding some nice movement and sparkle. And of course, to attach your earring findings or your necklace findings, whatever you want to use, I'm going to grab a jump ring, open it up, and then I'm just going to add that through the very middle loop in this section that's right above where we attach the dangle. And then also add my earring finding. Close it back up, and then you have your finished earring. And then of course you just need to make another one if you want a pair, but you then have your really cute snowflake earrings or pendant. That's perfect for any winter occasion. And don't forget, these will also exclusively be available for sale in my shop. Link will be in the description box down below. And if you want to learn how to make loads of the designs of jewelry within many different mediums, feel free to subscribe to my channel where I literally have hundreds. And if you want to support me in any way so I can continue bringing you these tutorials for free, there's always a super thanks button below. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.